Occupy Wall Street protesters continue to demonstrate across the country. In New York, protesters are expanding from their Wall Street base to other areas of the Big Apple. From downtown to uptown, they're marching up the Upper East Side. And in case the billionaires aren't following what's happening, protesters are taking it right to their doorsteps or outside their gates in some cases. Yesterday, Occupy Wall Street launched the Millionaires March. And on their target list of tycoons, conservative billionaire Dave Koch. Here they are in front of the house in New York. We spoke to one of the protesters there.
The protest because we want the rich people in the state to, actually in all America, to pay the taxes, because paying taxes is like investing in your country, and you definitely get what you pay. And if you're not paying for your country, you really are we're not gonna come out ahead. I mean, you cannot just squeeze the wealth out of the poor people.
Also on the target list, Rupert Murdoch, CEO of News Corp, which of course is the parent company of Fox News. The network not so popular with Occupy Wall Street protesters.
Fox News Live! Fox News Live! Fox News Live! Fox News Live! Fox News Live!
That was Fox's Geraldo Rivera being driven out by protesters as they repeatedly accused the network he works for lying. Well, RT has been covering this story from the very beginning. And as the movement grows in popularity, the mainstream media has now caught on, but only from the sidelines. We're even seeing some Republican presidential candidates change their tune when it comes to the protest. Mitt Romney at first called the protest dangerous class warfare. Now he's saying, I worry about the 99% of America. Suddenly he sympathizes with them. Here's a look at his thoughts about the protest during the presidential debate last night.
The reason you're seeing protests, as you indicated, in Wall Street and across the country, is middle-income Americans are having a hard time making ends meet.
Now, it took a while for some to catch on, but now that the protest has caught their attention, the focus is shifting from why they're protesting to what this protest means for America. And a new poll shows that 33% have a favorable view of the protesters. 27% don't think so highly of them. But an overwhelming majority of the American people, 79%, agree with the message of the Occupy Wall Street movement. That message is that the big banks are benefiting from the bailouts and the system while everyone else suffers. Joining me now for more is Charlie McGrath, founder of WideAwakeNews.com. Hi, Charlie. Thanks for joining us. Charlie, why is there any shock over the fact that people in this country are angry? If you take a look at the numbers, 1 in 5 are unemployed. When you add the unemployment and underemployment rate, as well as the long-term unemployed, which they're not even factored into that number.
Right.
So why is there this shock?
Well, I don't think there is shock. I don't think there's shock on Main Street, right? I think there's shock in a lot of the mainstream media, like you said in the opening. They weren't covering this protest until it was 20 days old, and the realization was there that it wasn't going away. So there isn't shock on Main Street. As you just pointed out, Main Street is suffering worse than the Great Depression, and there's many statistics that prove just that. 45 million people on food stamps, 1.5 million a million foreclosures in 2011, 1.5 million bankruptcies. Main Street is suffering. It's not surprising Mitt Romney is now wanting to jump on board, because the realization that the mainstream media portrayed this as nothing more than a hippie movement is rapidly evaporating as it spreads across the country and the world. So we'll see all kinds of politicians jump on board to try to harness some of this energy, because it's not going away.
And another reason why people are so angry is this growing income inequality gap. The top 99.9% has enjoyed increased economic growth over the recent years. And why is this growing income inequality gap not a concern for some? Instead, anger toward this trend is being called class warfare.
Yeah, I mean, look, what we have seen so far in the last few weeks of mainstream media coverage is the attempt to drive a wedge between what we perceive to be Tea Party members and what we perceive to be Occupy Wall Street members. This is going to backfire. The reason is because the underlying fundamentals of our economy it necessitates the fact that people have real outrage and real frustration because they can't find a job or they lost their home. And at the same exact time, they see Wall Street just riding high after receiving trillions upon trillions of dollars in bailouts. Anybody who tries to co-opt this movement and make it into a left or a right issue is going to be burned by this, because it's not going to go away like the Tea Party did under George Bush and then Barack Obama. It's not going to get co-opted and shoved into one of the political parties. This is going to continue to grow because the situation on the ground is dire for Main Street.
And, you know, we've seen anti-war protests before. We saw them during the Bush era. How is Occupy Wall Street different from these protests we've seen in the past, or is it different?
Well, you know, the Tea Party originally, not to get too far off topic, but the Tea Party originally, I was out there when George Bush was president. We were calling for an end to the illegal wars, the never-ending wars. And now we're fighting our longest one in the history of this nation in Afghanistan. So the people who are protesting Occupy Wall Street, or fill in the blank, because it's in just about every city around this country, they're protesting, they're saying the exact same things that we said at the beginning of the Tea Party movement. The main difference is then we were looking forward to what was going to happen with outrageous government expenditures, waging wars to keep this empire going. Now we're seeing people protest because they feel what we were talking about then. We were seeing into the future then. It is here now. And that's why this energy is not going to dissipate.
And, you know, why do you think it took so much time for much of the media to pay attention to this movement?
The mainstream media is, you know, it's corporately owned. We know this. You know, in 1980, there was 50 organizations that controlled about 80% of the media. Today, that number is about 6 that control 90% of the mainstream media. So they have a benefit in not getting anger generated towards their number one contributors, the ones who buy the ads. And these are the same two big DeFeos that the American people bailed out in 2008 and haven't stopped since. So it behooves them to have this this charade of normalcy, or this illusion of recovery. It really is in their best interest to keep as many Americans dumbed down as possible. But we've really reached a tipping point, you know, where there's no more hiding it. You can't continuously have $1.3 trillion in deficit spending a year, over 1 million foreclosures a year, and to see 400,000 people a week go on first-time unemployment claims week after week, year after year, and expect that people are just going to believe that everything's okay because we're issuing more debt to the people who brought us here in the first place.